Located just west of Kansas City is Tonganoxie, Kansas. It's a small town in the rolling hills of eastern Kansas, but some people believe it has a big impact on our weather.
Former weatherman, I think, on one of the channels, I think coined that, and it had something to do with the weather patterns, how they approach here and then seem to veer off in another direction.
The people I talked to in Tonganoxie seemed split on the idea themselves. That's ironic. Do you think that it's real?
I highly doubt it.
I couldn't say yes or no. It just seems like it happens an awful lot.
Stories in local publications over the last few years have dismissed the idea. One even said, there is no science to back it up, which isn't an unpopular opinion amongst local experts.
And I've attended a lot of our weather seminars and everything, and they all say that Tonganoxie Split doesn't exist.
Including KU atmospheric sciences professor David Meacham.
If you were to calculate statistics from all of these storms over many, many years, I don't believe it would show a meaningful splitting effect tied to Tonganoxie.
Rivers and mountains don't stop storms or tornadoes. Why would a town of 6,000 stop a squall line? But during a previous interview with an atmospheric scientist, she told me inadvertently something like the Tonganoxie Split is possible.
When you break that balance, the storm, yes, that part will be split, and you will not have this organized system over the city.
Research backs this up, including a popular study about storms splitting through Indianapolis. Even a study about St. Louis from the 1970s showed a similar splitting effect. One of the leading researchers on this phenomenon, Bob Bornstein, has been studying it for decades.
It really is the physical presence of the buildings that cause a barrier effect that causes the flow to bifurcate around the city. And then when the storms approach, the storms get caught up in that bifurcated flow, and they also split because of internal mechanisms inside the thunderstorm.
Here's what may be happening within the storm. This is a squall line. Squall lines are a balance between cool air in the rear of the storm, warm air in the front of the storm, those combining to get thunderstorms to form as it progresses forward. Well, as it gets closer to a city like Kansas City, the building barrier stops the warm air coming off the city to interact with the cool air, and that means the cold air or the cool air overall wins over, and you stop the rising effect of thunderstorms. And that effect seems to happen near Tonganoxie, Kansas.
Depending on the magnitude of the urban heat island, when you have a strong heat island, the city will actually initiate a convective thunderstorm right over the city and give you a maximum precipitation right over the city. When you have regional storms and it's windy and cloudy, the heat island cannot form. And so a moving storm, when it approaches the city, bifurcates and flows around, that goes around the city.
But if this phenomenon can happen in cities all over the country, all over the world, why not Kansas City?
So we've talked about cities like Indianapolis and St. Louis who have a similar size to Kansas City, and they both have this splitting or bifurcation phenomenon. So do you think that that can also happen to storms that move through Kansas City?
I think so. Kansas City is about the same size in aerial extent and population.
In fact, we may have seen a split just weeks ago.
At this point, I see two distinct maximum, indicative of a storm that has split as it's gone over the city.
The split doesn't happen with every storm. In fact, we can't say with scientific certainty that it even happens in Kansas City because, well, we haven't studied Kansas City. But at this point, it's hard to deny its plausibility. So maybe that former weatherman Dan Henry was onto something.